Good evening. I have 6:30 and I'll call the meeting to order, and Mr. Henry is going to present the 2024 General Fund Budget Overview.
Hey guys. Yeah, I did upload this to the packet website. I know I didn't have that last Thursday, but doing some adjusting as we go. First, this is a draft. Everybody knows this is first of 3, possibly 4, I think, workshops we could have on the budget, but it's important to start somewhere, and this is where I plan to start. I have a slideshow that's going to kind of guide our conversation, guide us through the packet. But we'll really start with always gets me. There you go. Yeah, I always like to ask why Bel Aire. Why are we seeing this increase in commercial activity? This increase of residential activity. I sit downstairs, and a lot of the conversation I hear are new residents that come in and sign up their water meters, and it's important that you guys as well talk to your neighbors, what you do, and understand why people like the community. And we try to design a budget that services those needs. A lot of my top 3 are safety, easy to commute, or proximity. I'm glad we're can't change your geography too much, but I'm glad where we have, and then quiet open spaces. And a lot of the struggles with growth comes with that quiet open spaces, and we're going to hear a lot about that. But that's not necessarily a budgetary item, but that's one of the main reasons. So it's something to keep in mind as we go through this. Next, we'll go with goals. Every good budget has a goal. I know property tax is very important to this council, and that's something to look at right now at 43.56. The 5-year replacement street, 5-year street improvement plan that we put in place about 2 years ago. As you know, inflation's hit, and some of those benchmarks, and we'll talk about more, but what was a $790,000 yearly commitment is now a $995,000, about $1 million commitment for the same exact work. We kind of realize that inflation's going to hit, and that's kind of where we're at. Continue to provide quality service. I always have this one in here. Employee retention's our number one thing. It's always good to keep the good employees and try to train and continue on there. This budget has our 2.5% merit step, plus I kept the bonus performance program in here. It does add a police officer, a clerk, and a marketing specialist, which we can discuss as we go through the budget. I always put in new technology, new software. I'm really big in making our current employees more productive so that we'd have to hire less employees as we continue to go forward. So we're going to look at that. And then maintaining what we have. Talking to the department directors over the past 2 months, it's really interesting to see how our facilities are starting to fall behind the times, and how some of our different amenities are starting to show their age, I guess. So that's another important thing. I think it's not necessarily do we build new, is do we maintain what we have, and what does that look like in the long run? Sustain fiscal stability, maintain a 30% reserves. I think I've talked about it enough. We have a lot of special assessments out there that the city guarantees a lot of these developments if there's a sudden change in economic direction. 08, 09 was not very kind to Bel Aire, so we adopted a pretty strong reserve policy, and I look to continue that, as well as fund other capital improvement projects. I know this council is very big on 53rd Street and getting it done. I mean, that's kind of a foregone conclusion now, but there's other big projects above, and we got to watch out for those and make sure we're not tightening ourselves into a hole. This is what we do. You've seen this slide as well, but for anybody that's watching, we provide all of the public safety and the police, the municipal courts. We pay debt with our general fund. That includes a lot of our larger, bigger projects we've done in the past. We maintain our streets. We make sure each home that's built is safe and up to code. That's what our building inspectors do, and as well as any new additions and decks. We provide parks and green space for citizens. We have a recreation center. We provide this building here, which is civic engagement in the public square. And we also have to have a team of, accountants and administration to help manage our employees, as well as the legal side of things. The good news, and as we start into the general fund on page 1, we did grow 19%. I got the estimates from the county. That's pretty good. That means 1 mil is worth about $100,000. So if you're looking at one as a benchmark, 1 mil is 100,000. So if you want to cut 100,000, that's a mil. Half a mil is 50,000. So as we go through all this, you'll kind of understand why we have the mill structure. It's a lot easier to just have a rate, but it's mainly tailored for decision makers so that they have a better understanding. I will say about 7% of that 19% was due to new construction and expiring IRBs. Something to keep in mind, about 12% is valuation on existing structure. I have a few emails out to the county appraiser to just drill down even further to make sure of those numbers. So I wouldn't count them as positive yet, but I'm going to get to that. Hopefully that detail of what's new construction added to our making our assessed value grow versus just current existing structures. I discussed it in May, but about 1 mil, the house valued around $300,000 is about $35 for us. As you know, we're just 30% of your property tax bill. When you see valuations grow like this, that's kind of everybody across the board is probably going to see that. I don't expect the county to lower their mill rate. I don't expect a lot of movement on anywhere else, but you can see we're right in the middle as far as total property tax total property tax impact on a resident. But there's everybody's real close there in the middle, so you never know what happens year to year. But I'll try to keep in mind of what other communities are doing as we see some of these evaluations come in. Again, this is just that slide that I had the other day, just kind of showing sorry, this thing's going a little crazy. What other communities done in the past 2 years. As you know, we decreased 2 mills. Some communities have chosen to do about $500,000 a year. I think Derby's done that the last 2 years. And then other communities, Wichita, other areas, they just decide not to touch it and have different priorities with their increase in evaluation. Let's go through the revenues real quick. I just want to highlight a few areas. So, on top, of course, we talked a little bit about sales tax and the growth at 19%. I went ahead and kept the same mill levy so you guys can see all the way through, and you can do whatever you want during discussion. Line 9 is our sales tax and our county sales tax. Bel Aire does not have a local sales tax, but it's part of Sedgwick County, and Sedgwick County has a 1 cent sales tax that it distributes to its cities based on a formula. There's a few factors on the formula, but one is assessed value. So as our assessed value grows, that number will grow as well. I put a few charts on the slideshow about how are we projecting this 1 cent sales tax. And it's very difficult when we have a lot of economic activity that we've seen in the last 3 years. I've been pretty cautious with our budget amount, but so I've updated our 2023 estimates to about 1.8 million from 1.5 that I thought at this time last year. That always helps. And then about 1.9 in 2024. I'm not sure what the current climate's going to be, but I don't anticipate our continue to jump up. I think spending might go down the next year, but I've been wrong the last couple of years, as you know. But I would rather try to get it about right on the lower side than on the high side, because then we're in a little bit of a trouble.
Hey, Ted, with your sales tax estimate, do we anticipate any impact as a result of food sales tax things?
Yeah, that would cost us about $300,000. Do we?
I don't exactly know what the current state of that is. I know it was a hot topic this year.
It didn't pass.
Okay.
It didn't pass this year, and it's something to keep our eye on. I'll continue to review it, but I hopefully they will not just shut it off. They'll give us a little bit more lead time than same year, so we'll be able to adjust as we go through. Some other highlights that I did on the revenue side: electric and gas franchise fees. That's set by state statute, and I guess we negotiate, but the maximum is set by state statute. That's coming in really well. And again, a lot of these are growth indicators. We're putting in more houses. We're going to see more growth. They're going to use more electricity. So that's a good number. Court fines and fees, I really keep pretty straightforward. We did increase our court costs, but I'm going to wait 1 year to see how we're trending, because we're trending well. We're trending on budget this year. Building permits, another hard one to estimate. This was last year. What we did about 198 new building permits that added 323 new customers. This is where we're at year to date. We're at 70 new home builds. And that's only 5 months out of the year. So if I, take that, it's about 168 if we keep this pace. But that's just new construction. And we'll discuss how many permits we actually processed here when we get into the budgets. But that number, I'm choosing to keep a little cautious on, but there's nothing like the 2022 600,000. So I'm working on that. I'll continue to monitor as we go through the process. The big one too is line 31. Part of our development agreements are that, if you want to come and special assess and to go through all that administrative work that I do, Ty does, you do, there's a 5% fee on that when it goes out the bond. We're going to go out the bond next year to about 7.5 million. That's when they all started. So that's going to be kind of a one-time revenue that we'll experience in the general fund, something to be aware of. Recreation, they're seeing the same numbers, if not better, pre-pandemic right now. I've kept that pretty steady because, really we're getting all full. So there's really not much more unless we want to increase fees to increase revenue on that. Pool, again, we're doing all right there. On line 58, there's the US on the grants. We do about $71,000 in grants. A majority of that is an agreement with the school district, and we provide their SRO officer, and that's been a good collaboration with us because we get to use the officer in the summer months, and then in the winter months she'll go to school and reach out to the kids. The Sprint Tower, or I guess line 62, interest on investments, that's been going very well. Hopefully, that we see better interest rates in our money market accounts. There's not too aggressive we can get with it, but I try to do it as best we can. The Sprint Tower, we got notice that we usually about $10,000 a year. We got notice that they're canceling that and removing their equipment from the water tower. So that we're going to lose some revenue there, about $6,000 projected in 2024. I guess the difference would about $10,000 in 2024. And then, of course, credit card fees. There is some. We do charge 2.5% on transactions over 1,000, and I know we'll talk about it when we go to that expense line. But I do want to point out we're not just giving free credit card processing for someone that wants to put a bunch of permits on their credit card. That's kind of our offset account for that. All in all, about $8.8 million in revenue I'm projecting for 2024. So this year, and kind of inspired me, I really appreciate all the work for Woodlawn updates and everything, but I noticed the graphs are a little tough. So I'm just going to try to explain to you what this budget's going to do in about 4 slides to just try to open it up, and then we can go. And hopefully it kind of tells you, really a lot of our spending is this slide right here, and it's people, debt, and street maintenance program. 8.8 million in estimated revenues. We have 2.1 in debt that we pay. We can't do anything about it. 3.7 in employees, 1 million in street maintenance. Now that can be adjusted, of course, because we control that. That's been one of the projects. So just doing those three things is about 78% of our revenues, leaving about 1.9 for everything else. As we go through all the budgets, it looks like there's a lot of line items and spending in our contractuals and commodities, which we do. We have a lot of that. But if you look at the big picture, contractual expense about 8% of our revenues, insurance, IT support, utilities, and I tried to do a really broad categories here, but you get a kind of the flavor of what we're spending and where. Again, we'll go and drill down through each line item, but this kind of gives you an idea. About 8% of our revenues, or $700,000, are spent on contractuals, leaving about 1.2 for everything else. Commodities, we have to have fuel, vehicle repairs, maintenance, chemicals, ag supplies, trees, irrigation systems. We do all those things. Uniform, safety equipment, bulletproof vests, all those different activities are out $530,000 or 6% of revenues, leaving about $680,000 left for everything else. A few years ago, we wanted to install a sidewalk program. That's $15,000. $40,000 we try to do with building upkeeps. There's some doors down here that need to be replaced. We got a baby snake the other day, so we're really focused on replacing some doors around here. But you always have to budget a little bit for those types of awning replacements. We traditionally transfer about $100,000 for large equipment. In 2024, we're looking at replacing some vehicles. You've seen some of our trucks, our public works trucks. We take good care of what we have, but they need to be replaced sometimes. New street sweeper, ours is getting pretty old. We'll look at that in 2024. And of course, some mowers, some other large equipment purchases. We've done the big sewer truck this year. You remember that? The previous year, we did a big dump truck. So we've done a really good job of keeping ahead of schedule of some of these larger equipments. The problem city has is they don't have discipline enough to replace these when it needs to be. So that's why I keep that in there. We'll talk more about 150,000. This goes along with kind of maintaining what we have. Looking at a lot of our parks needs a facelift, and that's about 150,000 we're thinking, which leaves about 380 or 400,000 for our priorities list at the end of the day. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of our budget. Now we'll go in individual departments. I just thought, why not try to do something real quick for everybody. Let's start with page 2, land. And this is primarily where we transfer money from the general fund to the bond and interest fund to cover our debt payments. In 2024, we'll have the final Woodlawn construction payment coming out. I don't show this too often because you guys kind of know what we're paying. There's I know we have a lot of change orders in Woodlawn, but the upfront expense was pretty locked when we went and bid out because we turned it over to KDOT. Probably the best things we did, as you know, in 2020, we ended up bonding for our Woodlawn design and engineering at a rate of 1.6%. When we found out our bid came in higher, we went ahead and took as much as we could, about $2.5 million, and got it at 2.1%. So all that stuff is already being paid. The remaining is kind of those unknown items. I mean, if we don't have to go line by line, but with our engineers, I thought maybe $50,000 would take care of the railroad track. Not the case. About $300,000 is what that ended up costing us. However, we found some savings. Probably the best thing, and I know it was a shared effort, but I just was able to talk to Sedgwick County and them giving us or deeding us over some right of way, and they also pitched in about $600,000 of this project. That really helped our budget on this. So what I'm thinking right now, and unknown, is about $150,000. That's probably well over what we're gonna do. It's probably a lot along the lines of line 25, which is our transfer to the land bank. Last week or right before Ty left, we did sell the land across City Hall, and that freed up $135,000 in special assessments that we don't have to transfer over now. So that pretty much took the place of what Woodlawn give or take a few 20 or 30,000 was going to be. So
They closed on that property now?
yeah, this one over here.
Good.
The other things, and we'll talk about it next workshop, is Woodlawn. That's the general fund's going to pick up basically the road and the storm sewers, but the water and the sewer replacements, those will be coming out of our water and sewer funds the way they should be. So those projects are sitting over there about $60,000 and $30,000 added. But I'm pretty sure we'll have some other debt that we had roll off as well pretty soon. So I'm not gonna say we're getting lucky, but we're structuring our debt the way hopefully we can in the future when stuff rolls off as new debt comes on.
Yeah, I understand the 150,000 for Woodlawn project, city project line item. That's what we're going to need to pay that hasn't already been bonded.
Exactly.
And is it your thought that that'll just be paid via cash, or will that be?
No, that we'll go ahead and bond it. That's a 20-year bond, annual debt service payment for a 20-year bond, because we're looking at $1.4 million that we'll have to bond. So unless we want to pay cash for 1.4, that would be our decision at the time. But
what's that 1.4 million? That's all the change orders?
No. That would be, so if you remember, the Woodlawn construction costs came in about $2 million over what we thought it was going to be. So we just went straight to bond with that $2 million. That was the remaining. So we were in charge of $6 million. That was 20% of the original. And here's where we get into a lot of the original estimate is what KDOT's going to pay us for, not what it actually bid it out for. So we're just on KDOT has a max and we have to cover the rest. So it's basically the rest of the construction cost.
So on your spreadsheet up there, it shows a little over $3 million has already been bonded in the 2020B and 2021C.
Yep.
Then there's 150,000 that hasn't been addressed yet. Where's the other million from?
So the actual line right here. So.
Oh, okay. The 150,000 is the difference. 150,000
is the debt service.
The debt. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
I was missing.
And that's at about a 5 to 7% interest rate. I don't know what it's going to be. And the good thing is GO bonds, we can refinance. So it's not, but I'm just being cautious on that, the interest rate. The next really 3 budgets, page 3, 4, and 5, we'll go into kind of admin, planning and zoning, and HR, which is more all the administrative and communications. And I know Ty's had some discussions, and he's with all our development, and especially our commercial side, he's running out of time in his day, and he's really wanting me to come upstairs and help him with some of his responsibilities and more of the assistant city manager role, which I have the title now, but I'm more of the director of finance. He talked to me and discussed, and I have a really good city treasurer who is very capable, and I'm holding on to a majority of a lot of the presentation style, but I do payroll, I do a lot of the processing stuff that we're going to transfer to the city treasurer, and then I'm going to take on more responsibility with Ty, as well as some of the standard budgeting, a lot of different tasks that Ty and I identified, and then on that we're going to try to hire a clerk that's going to help with some of the AP processing and a lot of what my current city treasurer is doing, because technically I don't have a lot of free time, so I have to give something up, then she has to give something up. So that's kind of how that's going to work. On the planning and zoning side, it's very similar. When I said they only had 70 permits, that's 70 new permits. They've actually had 450 new permits in the first 5 months alone, and we have 1 staff member for that. Administratively, they're overwhelmed. So with that, we're hoping that 1 clerk, and again, it'll be a lot of administrative maneuvering to help both departments with this 1 new FTE to be able to support planning and zoning, as well as some of the financial side of the job, so that we can continue to provide quality service. So that's that one position, kind of tied in two different departments. We can go back to number page 3, which is administration, and walk down it. Number 10 would be the biggest. I really think we can go to KMAG, which is a standard I've been talking about for a few years. Right now we're on GAP. We're the only city our size that's on this type of GAP, and we can discuss it. If you choose to go that way, you'll save about $10,000 in about a week of staff time, because basically they depreciate, and it's still up to a great governmental standard, and they still do all the same checkoffs. It's just not all the detailed depreciate, basically business accounting for governments. So we'll talk about it, but I wanted to put that in the budget so that we can experience the savings as we talk. I really think that would be a good move. The other thing, number 11, I added a computer support line to about every department. The new world is pretty much per user base. It used to be we were able to buy a Microsoft Word and keep it for 10 years and use the same license, but now we all have 365 accounts, and it's easy to divvy up to each department, say, hey, you got 5 employees, you get 5 of those. So that's what I'm doing with this budget, and as well as Adobe subscriptions. And I really think as we go forward in this world, everything's going to be user-based. So this is probably a good time as ever to include it in our budget. Liability insurance, about 10%, but the hard part with, and a lot of the things that I've noticed, it's 10% every year if you keep the same stuff and you have the same number of employees. But as you add newer stuff, newer employees, it's more because there are newer things to secure. So it says 10%, but I adjusted a few different numbers so that it's more reflective of what we're doing. If we're adding an employee, then that number is going to go up. On other areas, nothing really too crazy. The 28 is 10,000. We sometimes have that in there with the city manager being in all the different obstacles we have, as far as if we need to look at a different specific study here and there. We like to have some money set aside so that we can do that. That's always been there. Some years 2022, we didn't spend it, but I think in 2023, we're going to look at some of these city hall facilities and look at that. So just something to keep in mind what we do. On the planning and zoning side, page 4, again, it reflects kind of their side of the admin assistant, everything else. The other thing I'll say, with our full-time city attorney coming on, she's going to try to help a little bit more with planning commission and a lot of the legal side as we approach these waters. So Jay's going to be a little more available, hopefully, to take on some more building inspections. That's been another really soft spot for us, is we have one building inspector, and if he can't get out and go in, then we hear it from contractors. So this also, with the hire of the replacement of Jackie and able to kind of work on some of these zoning matters, we're able to free up some time too. As you can tell, a lot of our strategy in Bel Aire is to hire really good people, don't overwork them too much, but give them the appropriate amount of responsibility and go with it. And I think that this mixture of what we have going will work the best. On the contractual side, we did on page 4, line 39, or I guess they're all line 39. Sorry for that. We did say we're going to do about $20,000 if we need to for the Sedgwick County building inspectors. If we're doing this type of transition, and Jay can help pick up some of those building inspectors, we're probably not going to use the county as much as we thought. However, there is a note, if Integra does happen, we'll probably need a lot of their help for some of the more specific, some of the higher end type codes that they'll need. So that's kind of a to be determined line, but I wanted to point that out. On the communications and HR side, now I know Jim kind of presented a little bit on this one earlier this year, and I put together a few bullet points. This is really someone that can assist Tristan in keeping everything up to date, assist with website maintenance, city services, marketing, and city commerce park, assist with developing and executing communications tools like Channel 7, website, brochures, social media, newsletters, organizes and plans marketing campaigns and materials and data. We're going to get a lot of interest, and we're going to need somebody to help guide us with that interest. Also, better communications with residents, including monthly newsletters, increased social media campaigns. Really, we're doing everything we can right now, and this would, if you guys would like it, increase that marketing side. Now, this is up to you guys, but it helps us gauge what type of level of, do we need 5 websites? Do we only want 1? I would garner to say if we can't do 5, we probably shouldn't have 5. However,
We have
5. And Jim might be able to talk more on this one, but this is something that, Ty's really identified, as well as I think the mayor of, what can we do to increase as we enter these new waters, I guess, with Integra.
Just real briefly on that, I don't want to dwell on it too much in this meeting, but so we do have 5 websites, and they are not really terribly well linked to each other. And so if you want to know something about Rec Center, you better go to the Rec Center website, because the city's website isn't going to really tell you much. Okay. You want to know something about the police, you got to go to the police website, because the city isn't going to tell you a lot. So that's one issue that we've identified, that we need to kind of come with a marketing, bring this thing together consistently, and how to get those linked together. Like I said, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it tonight, but just so you kind of understand the lay of the land there, that's if you get somebody to do that professionally, you're talking about a pretty good sized ticket to get that done. And so we're trying to figure out some ideas, but we haven't figured them out yet. So we're still working on it, but just kind of give you a flavor that is not a good way to present the city the way it is right now. And we need to step up our game there somehow. So. But.
Yeah, and I think this is the somehow is we need more help, because or more direction on what type of communication services we want to provide. If it's just a one website and update that, that's great. And then we'll continue our social media presence the way you've seen it, as well as newsletters, that type of thing. I just think as we grow, the HR side of things grows as well, and there's certain priorities take precedence over everything else. So that's where we need the direction, or to add another employee to get up to the standard you want. That's really the conversation we're wanting to have in this budget cycle.
So the proposed, I think it was $50,000 amount, is that to hire an employee, or is that to hire services, or has that decision been made on the proposal?
The 50,000 new employee would run around probably around 69, 70 for that type. These
showed plus 51,699.
Where are you at?
On page 5, where it says plus marketing specialist. Am I misreading?
Yeah, I mean the difference between you talking the difference. No,
Yeah.
That's that also includes the other employees that are in there. Their 2% increase as well. So here's kind of, I'll go back a little bit. Look at FY23 estimate. This would be adding the difference in $26,000. This would be adding about mid-year marketing specialist. This would be current year adding. Sorry, that's the confusion.
Okay.
So I can give you the total would be about 70 would be the all in total. But the reason the difference is only showing 51 is because we already have that person employed in 2023, because we're going to jump on this as quickly as possible. Maybe not this position, but the previous one I discussed, that's the one where we're going to jump on as soon as we can. I'm sorry, I missed that.
We talked about Integra or no Integra budget.
This would be the no Integra budget. We can we can hold off with this position until Integra goes. That can be a solution. I can say we're already fielding questions and different things. So
Which position?
the marketing specialist one. The hard part is once Integra goes, that's when most interest is going to be. So that's kind of why I went mid-level or mid-year with some of these positions, because we'll probably want them started relatively soon if we want them up and running by October.
So I connect with the thoughts on, the websites and things like that. What I'm struggling with is whether it makes sense to hire, a dedicated website person on staff versus, hiring an agency to provide those services that has a team of people that could maybe do it. And then the rest of it, the social media stuff, we already have somebody on staff that does that for us, right? That's what Tristan helps us with.
Tristan's she's our HR director as well as our communication director. So she's juggling two jobs. That's kind of that she would still direct the messaging. It would just be more of the frequency, that type of broadcasting.
She's really contracted what she does on the websites to just the city main website. She doesn't touch any of the others. And rec center, I think, maintains their own, and I think police maintain their own, but the others just don't get any maintenance that I know of. Okay.
Well, I know you don't want to spend too long on this one. This is one that I have some concern with and would like to spend some more time on at some point.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure this makes sense, but I don't want to dwell here too long.
So when you look at, and I agree with you, but when you look at hiring that service out, we're seeing numbers of $50,000 just for that service, and that's just to get started. Okay, so does that make sense? I'm not sure.
We might also not be successful at getting the results that we want. We may be tricking ourselves to think that we can do it cheaper ourselves.
Well, I agree. So that's
You often get what you pay for.
I agree. I understand that 100%. So I'm not saying that we've determined what the solution path forward is. We're still looking at options. So yeah. Okay.
And that was one, I think we'll, like Justin said, it's one that we're going to have to really think on. And I think Ty probably has some more thoughts on that as well. He can probably broadcast what he's seeing as well. He talks to a lot. The first call usually with potential businesses is to Ty, so he'll be able to probably appropriately address a lot of your questions on that as well. But I did want to bring it up because that was something that we reviewed. Page 6, Mayor and Council. I got requested to increase council salaries by $50 a month, as well as include a $50 extra payment for CCUA. Sorry. So if there's any interest in that, we can have that discussion again.
Well, yeah, where's our candy? We gotta have some kind of compensation. It's candy or money.
The one thing I do want to bring up, and you guys can discuss your salaries, but I don't know if we want to do something. I don't want to go over $600. So like $500 for our planning commission. They do spend a lot of time. I didn't know if there was any interest in budgeting $500 a year for if you sit on the planning commission. That might give some incentive. I'm sorry. Per member. Mm-hmm. That might give some type of. What's that?
That'd be $3,500.
Yep. And really, it's more of the. I know a lot of the volunteer status of things, and it's always nice to have a little something for all your time you spend as we go forward. Something to think about. It was brought to my attention that might be a good idea, but
is that common across other communities? Do we know?
I have not researched this with something this small, but I can maybe look at. But
that was my idea with CCUA members too, that we ought to pay them a little bit.
Any interest in CCUA members?
I think CCUA bylaws don't permit that.
Okay.
That'd have to be amended by the CCUA bylaws to be able to allow that.
How could they not allow us to pay our CCUA representative.
I mean, we
We're
don't have to
members
call
of
it
the
CCUA, I guess.
We're a member. So we're bound by the bylaws, I think.
Any
mean,
strong
that's a legal
interest on
matter
that
to
for
ask
draft
the
number
attorney,
2, as
really.
far as,
You know, we need to do that.
do we want to have that conversation tonight as far as if you guys want to increase for the monthly? So right now it's $250 for council member.
It's 500 still for mayor, or is it
Well, it'd be $550 for mayor, but
550 for mayor?
Yeah, I don't care.
Mayor should go proportional. It is now. Justin turned it on for me. I didn't realize I had it off. Censoring myself.
the other thing, if we want to look at line 6, if we do go forward with a marketing specialist of some sort, we thought maybe in the description it would be, to help us with meetings and videotaping and different things. So that would show some savings if we didn't have to hire out this, the videotaping each month. So that would be like a $9,000 savings. I know that's not much, but it helps with the offset sum.
What meetings are those that
The one we're
Would be
currently
videotaped.
in, all the meetings. So Marcus,
we're already paying to have that done, right?
Mhm.
And we're still going to need somebody like that, aren't
yeah,
we?
the marketing specialist would do
You
that
think
job.
they'd be able to take over everything he does?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
If your technology, it's yeah,
I guess it depends on your qualifications, but
sure. It was an idea. I mean, I think if
It's an interesting idea. I think that's maybe challenging because it's an evening type deal. So then you're asking whoever is in that position to work evenings and also be available all of those nights instead of having, a company of people that could potentially send a replacement if we needed it. So something to think through there. I like the idea of offsetting some of the costs.
we're trying, and it's there is an interesting. I try to come as many because I think being here, you absorb a little bit better than on TV. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's some type of element of it as well. The other big,
Ted,
Yep.
Planning Commission, they currently get nothing, right?
no,
It's
strictly
purely volunteer. Have you heard any concerns from them about
Not
lack
from
of
them.
compensation?
Not from them. It was more of a lot of our staff are spending a lot of long nights with them and felt that it would be nice if they were able to, have just something.
Of the volunteer committees, they work the hardest.
They
There's
do.
No
Yeah,
question about
it's-
that.
Okay, that was my next question, was why just them, not
Yeah,
utility?
because
Where
they
do you start?
they
Stop?
probably spend 2 or 3 times as much time or more than any of the others do.
And they meet once per month. I mean, there's a
Once
lot of
a
work
month.
in between, but
Mhm.
once per month. I would be open to compensating them 25, 50 a month, something for their time, because they put a lot in. It's very important work.
I'm more open to that than increasing council salary.
oh, you're kidding.
I figured it'd be a good time to talk about
Not
it.
this year.
We're going to shorten meetings instead.
Yeah.
Right.
The other big one is on number 11, Bel Aire Chamber grant that we have, and I don't know the status of that yet. I don't know if, but I did include 20,000, what we usually
Oh,
do.
okay.
Something to think about as well.
Well, Gary's going to come talk to us next Tuesday.
Good. Okay,
So,
that's what I
Yeah.
figured. He's usually pretty on top of it, but
Yep.
that is included in this one. The next one, police department, page 7. And as you know, this is probably majority of our budget, at least personnel side and other. How do we retain good officers? How do we grow good force?
Have you seen a good reduction in overtime since we've got our force fully staffed? Have we seen an appropriate reduction in overtime?
Yeah, I mean it's hard because we're putting on a new KC. Just the Sedgwick County put on a new KC, just so there's some training going on right now. But overall, yeah, we're somewhat fully staffed there, but there's still the inherent work of police officer. You're going to have to go to court. You're going to have to, if you're working a case, you'll stay a few, 30 minutes later. But overall, it's pretty standard amount of overtime we're using.
Okay.
This budget does include another officer, and I think it's important to have, continue as we continue to grow, to continue increasing our force. We did a lot of conversations last year about where we stand as far as number of officers per 1,000 people. I know that's not a great metric. You guys don't like it too much, but it is something to look at. Probably the biggest thing, and I know we talked about it from a officer's point of view, but from a managerial point of view, if we're generals here and we're looking at the battle map, we're kind of surrounded with KPNF. Every city around us offers it to their officers. Now, I understand we've talked about it a little bit, but it's being used against us right now. We still have our 2023 officer open. We're still trying to fill it with the right person. There's not a lot of officers out there, so we want a good officer to fill, and that kind of goes with the culture we're wanting to bring. The hard part for me is right now is, I always like to let the market speak, and I'm wondering, is the market speaking to us right now versus the way it spoke to us in 2019 when we were half staff and we had to kind of resort to drastic measures. With that officer being still vacant, and we're going to work on trying to fill it as best we can, but we're not just going to fill it with anybody. As you know, the management and culture is number one, because there's a lot of programs out there that I've seen, that if there's a $10,000 bonus, sometimes they don't go and fill because the culture isn't there. So Chief Atterbury is very important about getting the right officers in place. But I think the benefits side does play a portion in it. Right now we're right at, if not slightly above some competitors, but we're not moving in the needle anymore because of this issue, I believe. The KPNF retirement system, it's hard to, if I can give you an example of, say you're a welder for the railroad, am I going to get you to come work for my welding company for an extra $1 an hour? Probably not. So that's the battle we're under is, how do you retain and also attract officers with that sort of offer, I guess. Now, my big thing is, in interviews, do I want that officer to show up to if I need him? That's the way I always look at it when I interview an officer. And you really know the good ones from the ones that you're probably not going to make an offer to. So it is a commitment. If we do choose to go to KPNF, it's about $112,000 more. I understand that's not a little bit of money, but I believe it probably sets us up for a more competitive officer corps as we move forward. So that would be from a managerial side. I understand from an officer side, it's a better benefit. There is a lot of concern. There is a lot of studies out there that shows officers have a lower life expectancy. They have a lot of that stuff, and I think Chief Atterbury and Fox approached that okay with you guys last time, but this is more of how do we remain competitive and keep a force active. So I'll let you guys discuss and answer any questions, but this is what I kind of saw.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know that discussion last month. There was there had been discussion about follow up about some private options or additional insurance. Is that something that's been looked into to beef up the benefits without necessarily going to KPNF?
It wouldn't move the needle, as well as The hard part with those types of plans is you want to make sure you do it. And I think we could probably write a policy that segregates the police officers. However, you got to treat, we have almost 50 employees right now. The other thing I really struggle with, and I've been through a few of these slightly less, is you set up some specialty program. And in 5 to 10 years, when we finally commit to KPNF because, something is hurting, then we take that away. Guess what they feel? They feel not that they gained something, but they took something away. So that's my biggest opposition to that is I've been through too many self-funded plans that they thought that it was worse insurance, so they all left. And there's a lot of perception to these types of specialty options. So my suggestion would be to bite the bullet versus setting up a 5% contribution rate.
Ted,
And that's being brass, sorry.
Ted, looking at hearing you talk about all of that, and then looking at the overtime projected for the 2024 budget is a $10,000 increase. That's a significant increase. Are you seeing that because you're worried we're not going to fill a position that we need, and that's what's going to make up some of the difference, or what was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's
Staffing.
that's a little bit of the thought that's going through, and overtime's so hard with police officers. Don't get me wrong. It's really difficult to figure out what, special circumstance might happen that would involve that. I've been doing payroll for 7 years, and some 2-week stretch will have a lot because there's just a lot of activity, and then it'll be nothing for 3 weeks. So this is more of me just looking at where we're at, and also the more officers you have, the more little overtime you're going to get. So that's kind of the thoughts on that one.
Just a curiosity, what is the overtime rule? When do they get overtime?
After 40 physical hours worked
40 hours worked
Per
per
week.
week?
Yep.
Okay.
That's a
So you
federal rule.
never changed that after the Bush administration made their
No,
changes?
it's still federal rule. Yeah. Law.
Okay. Well, that was the federal rule back when
Yeah.
George Bush
Yeah. It
W
hasn't been
was
changed.
president. They changed that rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be 40 in a week. Okay. But if that's what we've been doing, that's what we've been doing. So
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's that's not the rule anymore. So but okay.
So Ted, Wichita doesn't have it?
No, Wichita has a even better self-funded retirement system that Wichita does everything to protect their employee, protect their own tail. So
It just seems like you could do a lot with 14%. You could give them an extra raise, a special raise, and some planning on how to invest that. Like you say, 14%, they don't even hardly realize it. If you gave them an extra 5% raise or a bonus, they hit them real time.
and I understand their thinking, but I felt like we just went through that. We gave a huge raise to all our and somehow the market caught back up to us. So that would be my answer
We
to
need
that.
to do it again, right?
What's that?
So we need to do it again. And I understand what
Yeah.
Mr. David is saying there. It in some ways, if we opt into this additional retirement plan, we're making that decision for every officer to spend some of their compensation on this insurance/retirement plan for them, instead of, just giving them more compensation and letting them decide how to spend their own money. So that is one way to look at it. If what we're hearing from every single officer is that's how they would like to spend their additional compensation, then maybe we do need to consider that. Making that change and adding an officer in the same year is going to be a huge increase for PD, and it would make me wonder if we should not add the officer this year, if that's what we were going to do, especially if we're still sitting on the 2023 position that we haven't filled yet. In my mind, that would make it hard to know if we actually had the need for an additional officer if we haven't yet experienced the full state.
I'm concerned about this because of how much of an increase it is. And it's basically the equivalent of 2 positions. And if something happens to our budget, are we going to let 2 people go so that we can continue to pay the retirement benefit? I'm not saying I don't want to give the guys a decent compensation package. I'm just, it makes it very difficult for me to decide because of the numbers.
And it's every other city on the block up there is doing the exact same thing. We're not right now. So to answer, I guess to answer your question, this is the new market rate that I would probably say. If not, we'll find out.
And
In
you're
a year or
probably
two.
right, but I don't think the other cities are in quite the same position we are financially. They've had a more stable past.
But not
Yeah,
as
but
bright a
that
future.
Love it.
The problem I see there, though, is that if that's the perception of the officers that are coming or the officers' retention, either one, those passings of other folks is not an issue, is a non-issue to them. They're not even going
Yeah,
to
I
consider
understand
that.
what you're saying.
They're only going to consider what's the best for me and my family. And that's what they're looking at. This plan, this KPNF, is not just an additional retirement plan. It's a kind of an early retirement plan, and it's also a different way of looking at. I mean, it doesn't replace workman's comp, as I understand it, but it really impacts workman's comp if they get injured. So they get some compensation while they're off the job that's over and above what you would get on other workman's comp. So it was a much more comprehensive plan than just additional retirement insurance.
Yeah,
Okay.
it sounds like
It
a
had a lot
great
of
plan.
things to it.
Like I said, my only real problem is the sudden increase.
Well, I agree with you. I'm having a hard time
And-
dodging
and
that
it-
bullet myself, but
And it does make me concerned that we won't be able to hire 2 more officers. So back to Justin's remark, do we not hire an officer this year then if we,
I mean, I
Go
think
with
that's
this.
that's a deal we would make as, I mean, you guys ultimately control the budget, but I think that would be welcomed in that we're real concerned with losing officers right now because of this. So if we have to sacrifice one next year to keep 3 this year, it's that big of a deal.
it's the bird in the hand question.
Exactly. It's 100% the burn
So-
hand.
so when you increased the officer by 1, did you also increase equipment for that officer as well?
I did. So
And
we'll
about how
we'll
much money was
experience
that?
about the same savings as far
About
as
how
that.
much was that equipment?
It'd be about 100 and it'd be about 100 and I'll have to do it. I'll have to go find it, but it'll be 105, 110,000. It was I kind of imagine you
equipment?
guys are going to be
Total.
yeah.
Total
With
compensation.
officer salary,
officer
compensation,
and all that. The
all
total
that, yeah.
package. Okay.
So it's pretty much
okay.
a 1-for-1.
Okay.
I kind of thought we'd have this conversation, so I wanted to make things easy. So,
Is our crime
yeah,
rate?
the other thing is with another officer, I think I'd have to really be nice. We'd have to increase our fleet 1. So the extra officer is kind of the break point. So if we wanted to do KPNF this year, extra officer next year, see what our growth is, see if Integra, then we'd have to probably add another fleet the following year if we add another officer. So really, this is probably the time to make the decision if we wanted to do it.
Do you know what
Yeah.
Chief's thinking is on how badly we need more officers?
I had a conversation with him this morning. He reluctantly said it would be okay if we were to, mainly the argument we just laid out, it'd be okay if we remained with the same level of staff, but with KPNF, I would be able to retain probably, I wouldn't see any reason why
And
we would
you'd
be able to retain
you'd
everybody.
still fill that open vacancy.
And fill that open position.
that we have.
I can tell you I'm very cautious of overtime. So that's one of my, I will make sure we come in there. But I can't say that, people get sick, people go on vacations. I think we've got to the level where we can cover a lot of that without risking, the problem is you always have to have 2 officers on duty. So
Right.
there's a lot of times we have to do it.
So I'm kind of thinking that maybe that's what we should do is go do the KPNF, not add the officer. And keep in mind, this is probably the best opportunity to do this because Yeah, Integra's coming on, but Integra's not going to have a significant impact of police work for a year or two. Okay. That's when they're going to start seeing a real demand for additional police officers because they're going to have a lot more people here that aren't going to happen in 6 months to a year. They're going to happen in the second year or more.
You will have
Okay.
construction traffic. There'll
You
be
will have construction
hundreds and
traffic.
hundreds
There
of
will be
people.
that.
Yeah,
There'll
still be some.
no question. There'll be some
Yeah.
impact. I'm not saying it's no impact. I'm just
Yeah,
saying the real big impact
Yep.
is a year or two
yeah.
away.
Thousands of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I agree. I think I'm on the same sentiment as you. If we do KP and F, that we probably delay hiring another officer, and I think that sounds like a fair approach.
Does KPNF lower workman's comp any? To the point Mayor made?
No, I haven't heard of any of that.
I think it does. I don't think it does. Well, the work comp thing is a whole different game that you have to just play. It's all set in state law. You don't get a lot of
Yeah.
option there.
The
So,
office, if I remember right, and I'm probably wrong, the officers don't contribute anything to the KPNF?
Oh yeah, they do.
They
yeah.
do? Okay.
So they do even more than me.
Yeah.
I'm a Capers member, so they'll do 7.115. So
So
their contribution will
So
go
it's
up.
coming out of their pocket too.
And to tell you the truth, it's kind of funny how, I mean, it does Atterbury no good. It really doesn't do Fox that much good. This is all looking at hiring the next generation of police officers. It really is, and recruiting, good mentors for that next generation. Because I was talking to the chief today. It's like, it'd be nice to have some younger folks. Because right now we're a really experienced force, so it's good to use that experience. So I think we'll see a lot of positives with this in the long run. Because it's funny how we go from a small town of just trying to fill spots to now we got to grow a department. We're building things here in Bel Aire.
so with KPNF, do they opt into that or did you
Yeah,
just
so
say,
it'll
"Here
go
it is, you gotta
live
do it"?
January 1st, and then they'll be able to. Everyone will be automatically enrolled in it once we decide.
Oh,
and
they
then
don't have a
their-
choice.
Yeah, their capers years will help them vet because KPNF has like 15 years. I might have got that wrong. You have to
Okay,
vet.
yeah.
So they'll have basically 2 retirement systems, the current ones. But if you're new starting out, you'll go straight into KPNF.
Okay. So they will end up having to pay more out of pocket for this next year.
They will. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Based on all that, I would be okay with doing the KPNF and not hiring an officer.
Okay. I think that's the consensus around here.
I just wanted to state that in one sentence.
Gotcha.
I still can't believe they'd not rather have a 14% raise than a mandatory, I have to pay more for this retirement plan. That there's got to be a few of them that don't even want it, like you said, the chief and
Yeah.
others.
I think you're probably right. There are probably some that would rather have that, but when you look at the bigger picture of your competitiveness with other communities, that's not even, that's going to fall on deaf ears. Right.
As long
It
as
is,
we
and
don't lose
you really
somebody.
gotta. It's a sacred order being a police officer, and it's really interesting to be around them every day and making sure it's their system, and I think that is kind of helps play into that mentality. If you're outside the system, you're outside the system versus inside. So I think this will improve a lot of different areas. The other things with the police, because that wasn't the only one.
Oh, maybe we don't want to make that decision.
Make a decision.
Number
We
10,
can't
a
make
lot,
any
a lot, a lot,
decisions.
a lot of lines of a lot of things that aligns with per user. I created a video management and storage line for the police officers. We're going to be dealing with dash cams, body cams, all the way throughout everyone, and we need our own line. You can see that number did jump up. The contractual line, what we used to pay, went down 12,000. So 12 to 30, there's a difference there. If you remember correctly, at the end of last year, we finally got a bid for our dash cams to be the same camera company as our body cams, Axon. They're going to install that this year. That's instead of us buying physical servers and doing so. That's kind of a replacement of us buying large servers and management software. It's pretty much a one-time fee to or it's a user fee to them instead of all the hardware we have to put in. So it is increased a little bit, but it decreases on our large infrastructure or our technology purchase that we would have to make to upgrade our system. We
So
currently
this is
have.
going to be more of a cloud-based type of service?
It'll be a
is that what
cloud
they're-
base, and believe it or not, they're a lot easier because they you can just pull it down and send it. As you guys know, and Chief Atterbury's been up here saying, actually the cameras go in our favor 99.9%
Oh,
of the
yeah, I
time
know.
because we just send them the footage and the dad or the mom says, oh, that wasn't how they always explained it. So it's really interesting to see. But right now what it takes is Lieutenant Fox sitting burning it to a disk and it could be 10, 12 minutes, 20 minutes. Now this can just literally be pulled down, put in an email and sent out. So it'll be a good program once we get it up and running. But as we said at the end of last year, we couldn't even get a bid on it for about a year because these companies are so busy and don't have it. So we were glad to hopefully get it in. Opioid settlement expenses, the city, their contribution for the I can't even say that word, opioid settlement is about $20,000. There's some strings attached to that. We're looking at different avenues we can to support our mission. If it's a lot of different areas, but Chief Atterbury's looking at that, and we'll bring you guys what we're going to spend that money on, or what we think we should spend that money on.
So if I understand right, just broad brush of strings attached to that is you got to do something for
Drug related.
right?
Yep. Yep. So and it's
Just
what's
have police
so
officers
someone's
on the street.
overdosing on fentanyl. There's some there. Yeah, Narcan.
Narcan's
a lot
one
of that.
thing
A
you
lot
can
of
do?
those types of expenses. We were thinking of you can wrap a car in dare stuff. Just trying to think of different ways you can advertise. Dare stuff when I was a little kid, but we're gonna again. I enjoy let's see what others are doing a little bit, and then if it looks like a good idea, let's do that.
Okay.
Everything else is pretty standard on the line 32 will probably go down with us not hiring another officer because I would have had to add a body cam. We might still have to add one, I believe, because some of them just get older, but we're going to have to start.
Pay all on subscriptions now.
Yeah. Let me look at that again, but that number might go down with what decision we made tonight. The one big thing is radio encryption. That might be this year or next. We're not sure. There's a big push to encrypt radios, police radios, so that it's for the safety of a lot of different individuals, especially minors.
Is the Sedgwick County Emergency Management pushing that?
Yep.
Mhm.
I believe that's the, and I'll get more information on it. Chief had it in front of me, but
I would assume the new Motorola radios that we just bought are compatible with that.
they're
right?
compatible, but it's $200 to $500 a radio. Nothing's free in this world, Justin. So we're debating because we were looking at some new radios and they said it was $300, but to do the existing one, it's $700. So we're still looking at that, but we know we're going to look at encryption either this year or next. Page 8, municipal court. Pretty much the same as it's been year after year. Number 11, the contractual 11, the court-appointed attorney. As you remember, we had the same one for, I think, 10 years, and he just said, let's just do per case, I think it's $250 instead of
Changes the
nickel and
pay.
diming one sometimes the case can go on for 3 years. So we might see an uptick in that cost, but
Mhm.
I think in the long run, it'll be about even money. But that's a line to watch. Everything else pretty standard. Yeah. Next, number 9. Let's look at parks a little bit. Marty, our new public works director, is doing a good job, and he's, as you. Hey, Marty. I didn't see it. As you transition some things, it's a little interesting. He was saying we used to hire out every park mode We still have some, but he noticed we're mowing. So let's take Central Park over here. We mow all the berms and everything, but we don't just take the extra 15 minutes to mow the actual park. So what we're trying out this year is just taking that extra 15 minutes and experiencing some savings, and then seeing what happens if it's hard on equipment, if it's taking too much time. We're really evaluating it this year to see what time savings we could have or money savings. And we're going to continue that program next year. I want to get you guys some data. I'm more of a data guy. So before we said, oh, don't take your time, let's not do it. But I think the opportunity cost is right there to where, I don't know if that's the right word, but if we might as well take the extra 15 minutes, get it done, save the money, and then have more for others. So I think a lot of the bigger jobs we still contract out. It's just some of those time, why are we going out to this? But the other thing we did notice, so this is Eagle Lake Park, and that's the playground, and those are the bases of Eagle Lake Park. I don't want to broadcast too much. It's not, I don't think it's unsafe right now, but it's one of those things where I said in the beginning, not only do we want to provide the best, quality service, but we also have to maintain what we currently have. There's some other type of examples. Marty said, that sand could probably be replaced in most of our parks, as well as some of these benches need to be replaced. And these aren't big ticket items, but they add up, a load of sand and different things. So that's a new playground right now is about $100,000. It's kind of crazy. But it is. So that's what I have in the bottom 38 would be a new park equipment. And then 39 would be a lot of the benches and other things. We would maybe looking at new resurfacing on some of these parts. If we're going to do new equipment, we would do new surface with that KDHE grant if we could. But if not, that's what we'll do. That's what we were thinking this year.
Can those, and maybe this is more of a question for Marty or somebody else.
Yeah, I'm glad he's here.
But can those footings be redone with cement to reinforce them for a period of time?
And I can answer that question. Yeah. Same way our pool can be plastered. And,
Okay.
And that's yes, we can do that and save it for 5 years, but that pool's going to need replastered again. So that's kind of where we're at is,
Okay.
do we want to keep doing it or not? Now you can currently say repair it, Ted, we're going to go on. But I think these are the type of things I want to bring up before you as we continue to grow, because these are not just kind of like insurance, it's not just the 3% a year. We're adding new equipment, we're adding new things. So
This looks like something my deck did. And the solution to that is a concrete footing and get the post up above the ground.
yeah, Marty, we can repair it all we want. The other thing, is
I believe that's the oldest one we have right now.
yeah.
And if you look at it, it's pretty faded out. It's got mold going around all the plastic and everything.
That's
So you think it's about end of life for the whole piece of equipment?
I think it's getting unsafe. As we do our monthly inspections, that's the one we have to deal with right now at Eagle Lake. And that gets used a lot. So.
I told Marty to go take a picture, and there was a family there. So I wanted to put it on there, but I didn't want to broadcast it.
Ted, I appreciate you putting this in here, because I think as we grow and we talk about the potential of requiring developers to put parks and new developments, and as you start adding up the numbers of just the parks we have now, I think if we're not intentionally programming almost a full park replacement every year, we're never going to keep up with the parks. It's just not going to happen. So I appreciate you sticking it in here and making us think about it, because that is a big ticket item, but we're going to start having a bunch of them just on top of each other. So I think it's good that you put it in here, and I certainly support that. And I think it's good that you guys are evaluating the parks and which ones kind of need the most help, so that we can bring those to the tops of the list.
So just to kind of get a baseline, if you replace that unit right there, what's the ballpark of that replacement cost?
100,000.
Okay. That's what I thought
And
you
that,
were
does
gonna
that
say.
include like the safety surfacing and,
No, the safety search would be another 50, but I
and
think
not, probably not the swing set that's off to the side and, yeah, just that unit.
so. And I judged that off of the Skyview Park that I think we saw some diagrams on it. That's another new park we're going to have to look at really soon too.
Yep.
But that equipment is about the same size, and it was 100, 150, and that was a year ago. So hopefully it's not. But we can kind of design what we want on that.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting this in here. We're frequent users of this park, and my kids experience some of the safety issues there personally. But it's a great and well used park. But this is a lot of money. 115,000 is a huge budget expense that would go a long way towards street repairs or other priorities. Kind of along the lines of what Councilmember Dean was talking about. It feels to me like we need a program around the parks where we are just consistently setting aside an amount of money every year and just putting that to the parks so that it's more rateable and it's not, hey, surprise, this year $150,000 to the parks and next year no $1,000 to the parks. Maybe this is a situation where we could do some repairs this year and defer it another year and build up half of that this year to or something like that. But I think some sort of rateable program for the park maintenance makes sense because, in my opinion, it is just as important, if not more important, to keep up the stuff that we have instead of putting in new.
Yeah.
If we can't take care of what we have, we shouldn't be putting in new.
So what's the life cycle of a piece of equipment like that? Do you have any estimate? Okay.
What's that? 25 years now?
Yeah, probably.
That old? Okay.
That one there, if you're looking at it, it's all wood floored and everything. So if you look at it, it's not going to be like the newer version. That's old style there.
Hey, that's not old style. Metal slides are old style. That you have to pour water over them to get them cool off before you use it.
Yeah, but a little wax paper and you could fly.
Yeah.
And Justin, I think when we talked at January workshop, I had like $50,000 for our park every year going in the CIP, and I realized it's probably gonna need to be 100. I mean, reality, a lot of our parks need updating, and if that's why we're attracting families, we need to make that investment, I think, and that's up to you guys to explain why we're spending this or that or the other. But that's what I'm seeing is I think and I've been with you guys for a long time, is it's always so much friendlier and easier to plaster the pool or just, let's just get to next year. And I think we're at that point, and we're not gonna be able to do it all, but we're at that point where we need to probably make those types of decisions for the future. So something to think about. I'll keep it in. If the money works out, then we'll get it scheduled and work on it. Recreation's our next budget. Really, Brian does an amazing job at running that rec center, and I think a lot of his stuff will come out when we discuss our park and rec plan of what we're going to see in the future. His expenses it's a little volatile right now because our day camp's doing so well that we're doing some seasonal employees to keep up with that. So that's why you might see some of the personnel jumps a little bit. The other thing, we're still looking for a rec coordinator. We've been using a lot of part-time help to assist with that, that duties. So I kept that in there because we really need it. Brian's working way too many hours and way too long to keep everything going. So hopefully we'll find the right person on that. But really, some infill dirt, and then we'll wait for the study and then make some of these bigger decisions, I think, in the CIP, which is what we would prefer to make these bigger decisions. If we're going to invest a large amount of money in the rec center, it's going to be in a long-term fashion than in an annual budget. Senior center, same way. I didn't touch it at all. It's going pretty well. So we won't know if we need to address page 11. Page 12, Central Park Pool, same thing. I didn't really want to put more money in the pool. I don't think you guys did either. So I kept it pretty much standard.
Have we seen any problem with the admissions since the rates went up? Or
Complaints, you
admissions-
mean?
Yeah,
We got a few.
but is the usage about the same, or
I haven't seen the reports yet.
it's kind of early? I know.
Yeah, it's kind of early, but I know
feel like
I
the
know they're
weather-
busy. I
I
think.
feel like the weather's been a little cooler too to start
Yeah.
the summer. So I've been a few times. It looks like it's a little light, but I think it's just because it's early in the summer.
cool.
It's been cooler.
Okay.
Yeah, it has been cool. Especially the last few days.
Yeah, it's supposed to be warmer next week, right?
Kind of last big one is page 13. Credit card fees. Now,
Wow.
in COVID, we decided not to charge to entice people to use our online system. And we could talk a whole workshop about the problems we have with our current provider. Is kind of a one-shop pony. You can see the amount owed, and you just pay with your debit or credit card. And we have a pretty low rate on the processing fee, so we're about 2%, but a lot of people are doing it. I think I reported it beginning of the year. We're seeing the exact same number of transactions or of hard bills that we did in 2019, but we grew by 1,000. Yeah, everybody's going online to do things. So I think the first element of carrying this is one, if allowed, we would go out and find a new accounting utility billing software provider that actually it'll bring that charge back on. So it's kind of a all-inclusive, hey, we're switching technologies, we're going to have to pass this fee on to the consumer. If
we
not, you know how much it costs. It's about 38. You got to subtract that 10 to 15,000 we collect in fees because it's all lined up, and so it's about $38,000. Let's just go or $48,000. Let's go with 2022 actual. Oh, sorry. Let me back up. 38 because we collect 10,000. So it's getting up there to a point where we probably need to make a decision on what we want to do.
So you're saying we collect 10,000 in fees for just credit card services?
Transactions over 1,000. So some
Okay,
builders
that's
likes
it.
to. do
All
it
right,
with
so that's where it
permits,
is. And
That's
it-
my cutoff.
But anybody else is just we're giving them the credit card.
Yeah,
fee
just like
free.
any normal
So
business.
one of the things I'm hearing is that the credit card companies are raising these fees like crazy. And I don't know if apparently you have not experienced that yet, but that's what I'm hearing out in the industry.
Yeah. So the way it is your lowest is like a Visa debit card. It's like 1%. But you get to the Amex business card, they're at 5%. So your middle ground is 2.5%, 3%. Most cities will do 2.5%, 3% charge. Just to some they'll lose, some they'll make a little, and they even out overall. That's what we did before COVID. Now we're getting to a point where so many people are using it, it might not be advantageous. Now, the one thing I did do for 2024 is moved it out of the general fund, because why is general fund paying? All these are water and sewer accounts. So I'm going to move it to water and sewer, treat it like a business would, because businesses actually can't charge this. Only governments can charge a convenience fee. So as far as the businesses go, they just absorb that fee and hate that fee and should be outlawed and all that good stuff. It's the reason why there's some companies will come to me as a finance director and say, hey, we'll give you a credit card. You make all your expenditures on credit cards and we'll give you a rebate. I understand. I just don't want to do business that way because I know what it's doing to all our vendors. And some cities will do it. I just think it's the root of all evil. All you're doing is collecting fees and bringing it back to you. So anyway, so that's what I'm going to do for 2024. I think if we don't go to a new tech company, somehow I'm going to really push for it because it's going to improve our lives dramatically. If we do that, that will come with the fees, and we would not be paying this anymore. If we don't, we'd probably have to endure the calls and the frustrations with adding it back on.
Where's the line item for the new accounting and billing software?
So that would be paid out of, that would be like a capital CIP project.
Okay.
But right now it's about $150,000 to $200,000 upfront investment first year. And then once they have us onboarded, it'll go from a $20,000 annual fee to maybe, depending on what we buy, $50,000 to $70,000 in annual software fee.
But that would service water, sewer, and the rest of the city
And
all in one.
accounting, HR. I mean, this could really cure a lot of our problems that we're having even now with onboarding employees and all the questions we get. What if there was an employee self-service center? We don't have one of those like everybody does. I still do paper timesheets. So of course there are Excel files, but yeah, so there's a lot of improvements we can do. It's my number one priority once we can get our head above water. Hopefully, with some of the maneuvers we talked about earlier, I'll have some more time, and Deb and myself would spearhead this along with Tristan on the HR side to get everything up and running. What you would see is a lot like Evergy. So you can get texts that say, hey, here's your projected bill. You know, there's all kinds of huge advantages to this. The other thing on security, I'm selling it right now, but I will. On the security side, right now, you know, you have to come in and give your if you want to automatically take it out of your account, you give us a letter from your bank saying, here, I want you to take it the monthly from the account. That would all go online. We would not have to deal with any ACH payments or anything like that. Everything would be online and at the user expense or at the user's discretion. So
Yeah, because today, if I remember right, you print off like a list of all the ACH payments and manually
I
do those in the
submit them to
system.
yeah.
There's
Everything
no
we have,
integration, so-
it'll be a fun conversation because what we have is a kind of a dinosaur system. And in 7 years, I've added 3 different programs on top of it to be able to communicate with the modern world. And I think we'd be getting rid of at least 3 programs with one, maybe 4. Now that's for probably the November to December workshop, but that's something that that would cure this ill or help us a little bit with this expense.
Just feels
That's
like we keep spending money on that system and we need to spend more.
I would say we're going to make so much money because it would avoid me hiring another clerk 100% in the next 5 years. I can pretty much guarantee you that.
I'd rather invest in that than in the marketing position. Personally.
And that's kind of another one of the discussions. If we can make HR a little easier. Now, the problem is the more employees you have, the more HR issues you have that aren't quite onboarding. There are, disagreements there. So I'm not going to say Tristan's going to be 100% marketing once we install the system, because there's still going to be little tissels. There's going to be problems as we approach 50 employees. That's the other big thing. I hope we approach 50. That'll help us with our health insurance a lot. Right now we're age banded. There's a lot of issues with that, a lot of issues with budgeting in that. Hopefully once we reach 50, we'll just have a group rate. That's huge for us, but we can't get there yet. So we're working towards it, but a lot of these types of problems can be cured here in the next, hopefully 10 years, 5 years, maybe.
So Ted, just to clarify that,
Yep.
then you're counting on 35,000 in savings by spending 150 for this new software.
Well, it'd be a lot more than 35 in savings. I was just talking about, we wouldn't see a credit card processing fee of $38,000.
That's what you've already got banked into line 4.
Line 4 right now, the 35 in savings. I'm transferring that until we get the system set up to the water and sewer funds, because all of those transactions are made paying your water bill and sewer bill. And I don't think it's fair for the general fund, which has nothing to do with water and sewer, to absorb those payments. Not yet, but I can. The other thing, computer support services. Now, the service contract's about 64,000 a year, but they have, if we have to have a project, there's time that we spend now. We've replaced, oh man. So we used to, if you remember right, we used to spend about $40,000 a year on IT, contracted IT. Well, we found that that it was a good deal at the time, but we had to update a lot of systems in the last 2 years. So that line item's a little up and down. We're now at the point where I think a lot of our big projects are taken care of, but I know there's still a few out there that I'll be discussing with you guys at the end of the year. MFA, some of our security measures probably need to be increased. Now, I could sell you a Cadillac. This is what we're going to try to decide together is, do we want the premium top of the line, or do we just want the standard, or do we want a little better model with good insurance? So that's a conversation we're going to have on security, IT security. I will say that they did try to infiltrate our system, and we actually did really well because our contract IT, they do invasions on their own systems, or I don't know how they do it, but they said surprisingly did pretty well. The big problem we have is the phishing attacks. So many, you just can't control them hardly, and MFA will help. We're working on that, getting a better solution. But that basically will lock out people from trying to remote in and send emails from your account in different areas. So, and more dangerous would be to remote into our system. However, I don't even have administrative rights to our server, so it still can happen. But we really try to lock down with our policies as much as possible. Other than that, really pretty standard stuff. The sidewalk improvements, I got tired of coming up here and trying to explain, well, that was a 2022 expense, but we didn't get all the applications till October, and we didn't spend it till 2023. So we're going to put that in a non-budgeted capital improvement program, and just know that we're going to continue, or if you guys feel that 15,000 or so grant program, if someone wants to apply for a grant to replace their broken sidewalk in front of their property. So that's what that is. And then the next two big things is line 31 and 32, and it kind of goes along the lines of, this is what the original plan was by PEC, and we might have PEC come and give a or somebody give a presentation of why we're attacking these areas and why we're doing it. And then this is their updated proposal, and that's what covers the $995,000, or about $1 million that I have budgeted there. And then really the rest of it, I just said priorities, and that's what we've been talking about since January is, do we want to use that money on priorities? Is there other priorities that are higher than these priorities? And then that's your discussion. The one thing I did as I was going through, and in 53rd, a lot of these bigger projects might be bonded, or a combination of cash and bond. We might do some of that. We also discussed in January using some land sales to kind of offset our annual debt service payment for land. That will free up money to address some of these concerns. We can talk about that as we go. Some of the cash, what we just talked about, upgrading our software, about 200,000. I have that in for 2024. That's the big one that I'm going to fight for pretty hardcore. So that would be, that. And then as we talk bike path, or a lot of studies you're going to get thrown out in the end of this year. You're going to have a study on Parks and Rec. You're going to have a study on the Public Works facility coming at you. You're going to have a study probably on City Hall on how we can maybe create another 1 or 2 offices here. So you're going to get a lot of ideas thrown at you in the next probably 6 months. And that's where a lot of this capital improvement expenses are going to have to be divvied and applied for. This is me just today. I was thinking, man, we don't know what Central Park Pool we're going to do with that yet. That once was a known factor. Now we're kind of up in the air. refresh existing park. That's where I said, okay, 100,000 a year, maybe. Maybe we look at structuring what we want. I understand, as well as the ERP system, and then all the new parks. I know the developer over in Skyview is really itching to implement something, so we're going to have to act on that in about 6 months or probably 4 months. By the end of this year, we have some money set aside for that in 2023, but I think the design is going to come in and it's going to be a little more than that. So that'll be a discussion. So really that 400,000 is where you guys really going to have to think really long and hard of, do we want to absorb that and make the decisions off this in our CIP or not. So that's what I'll end a little bit with you guys tonight and let you guys talk. The best part about where we're at tonight is this is the budget calendar and we're right here in line 3. So we have a lot of time to talk. However, I have a feeling, it goes fast. So July 11th, we're going to do a short council meeting and then talk about all our other funds, water, sewer, street. The one thing we need to be aware of July 11th in the workshop is we do need to set post our anticipated property tax rate. So I'll make the changes that I think that we talked about today in this budget. We'll review water, sewer, and all the other budgets, and then I'll touch on the general fund at the end of that workshop, and we'll submit to the county for that revenue neutral rate notice. Yes, I imagine we're going to exceed our revenue neutral rate, but we do have to put in a property tax amount if we want to just do the one we did last year, but I imagine there'll be some discussion on that. And then in August 8th, we have another workshop. Before August 10th, the taxpayer notification forms will come out from the county clerk. That's, where we can discuss if, I don't know what the reception was interesting last year. I think there was a few that got some, as far as there's a lot of confusion. That was my biggest thing, was confusion. And I get confused sometimes on that, and I'm in it every day. So I'll try to do as best I can to help you guys and give you as much ammo as I can to tell you what we're doing. But I hope tonight helped you out and, kind of the direction of the city and what we're facing and what we're doing.
I just give him Senator Tyson's number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ted, where are we at with the CARES funds?
The ARPA.
Yeah, the ARPA funds. Thank you.
Yeah, so they're in the CIP right now. So they're available to be spent.
So just I think that based upon what Congress just did just in the last couple of weeks, we'd be wise to go on and get that money spent someplace. I understand what the current law is, but they just changed a whole bunch of that. And I think they did the right thing, but I'd like to get that one taken care of before they change the law on us to that.
Sure.
Okay.
And here's kind of what police officer, of course, governmental services are included in this, and it's pretty much it's spent. So it's just not. As far as the reporting goes, it's spent on basically police salaries to address COVID, the agreeable, but it's sitting in our capital
You're
improvement.
saying administratively, we've already spent the money?
There we go.
So
Okay.
we need to make that a record that happened.
I report
and
once
quit
a year.
reporting it as ARPA funds and report it just to CAP.
Yeah, I
budget, whatever it
haven't
is.
reported in the last.
Okay, because I think
Yep.
we just need to get that off the books.
Yep.
Because I don't have any control what Congress will do, and none of us do. And my concern is that they may come up with something else that will, and I wouldn't fault them for it. I just say we need to make sure we take care of this before something else happens.
And I'm working with our auditors currently on all the paperwork. So
Okay.
it'll be done.
Appreciate that. I had another thought. I can't remember what it was. Okay.
And then one last thing, Jim, and then page 14 is kind of our summary and the ending balance. And with everything I said today, we'll end 2024 if all my revenue projections are correct, and all my expenditures will end 2024 with 30% of reserve. So that's just shows you guys that we're maintaining our fiscal stability with the proposed budget on the books right now. Now, we know it's going to change. I just let you know that that's kind of where I look at when we know we're meeting our policy limit or target. Our limit's actually less than that, but our target is 30.
Oh, I know it was. Go back to your map of the that one. Yeah,
Oh,
that
sorry.
one right there. Right there.
The new one?
So I'd asked yeah, it's not relevant to which one it is for my question anyway. So I had asked that we review this and make sure that we've gone back and added all the city streets that were not put in the original report. And I don't know if that's been done yet or not. We need to make that happen so that we're getting the complete picture here, because I think there were some, I don't know all the thought process and not putting those in there, but I know there was some discussion about that, but we don't put it in there, we're just going to forget it. Next thing we're going to know, we're going to have a street that's falling apart and we say, well, I thought it was in there, but it isn't. So,
Well, and I think we also discussed making sure the concrete streets that we've replaced in the past were in there for the
yes, they need
crack
to be
ceiling.
maintained. We got to maintain all of them. We
And I-
can't leave any of them unmaintained.
Jim requested too that we look at what we've done in the past, how well it's held up too. So we
Right.
have kind of a complete
So
picture.
we did that ceiling in Central Park. I don't know how well that's worked. I mean, it was a new technology that we hadn't tried, but where is it today? I mean, that's been a few years now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we should know something about it.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ted, on your first slide, you had a fill in the blank for our mill levy. I assume that's because you were wanting some discussion on that tonight and you probably need some guidance, or I guess the question for you is, are you looking for some guidance from the council on that tonight?
I need some guidance because then I can propose what the costs are. I've tried to put together what we could do now. If we want to look at it, you can.
Just to refresh, so make sure we understand that the general revenue fund revenues, line 69, the $8.8 million. That is if we do not do a thing to our mill levy and we just let the valuation increases affect our tax base.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was the 19
That's
with
19%.
7% being new construction and 12% being additional to existing structures.
Mhm.
So,
Incredible 1 year increase.
Yeah, it is.
Have you ever seen an increase of that size in one single year?
I've never been through a housing market like we've had the last 3 years. I don't think either has the appraisers, but the appraiser is based, again, they do what they do.
Sure.
We don't have control over it. I don't, my only concern is it going to be 7% new construction and 5% next year? Yeah, that's what again, this is your guys' decision, but that would be my, I don't think we're going to continue to see this. There's no way, is there?
What was, what
Well,
was last year's increase?
There's the mutiny, right?
Ted, do you recall what last year's increase was by percentage?
Oh, the total 10%.
Okay.
So
Just
here's
for
that.
comparison.
So last 3 years, we did 33%. So about 10 a year last, and that's been pretty evenly. It's been, and again, it's hard to get with what new construction versus existing. You'd think it's easy, but you have to data mine some things. It's usually like 7 or 6 and 4. So 6 existing, 4% new. This year's we had a good year, 7% new. But
I think that breakdown I think was interesting, understanding that 12% of the 19% is valuation increases, and that I'd be shocked if that sustains over time, that year over year it's 12% valuation increases, but who knows? I don't have a crystal ball for that. The 7% on new builds, I think we have some insight into what that's going to look like because of the permits that we're seeing here in 2023. That's going to give us some insight as to what we should expect. January 1, 2024 appraisals are going to include is all of the things that we've issued permits for this year. And so it's probably pretty reasonable to assume that the new construction is going to continue to go up maybe about what we've seen or more. I'm not sure. You probably have better perspective on that.
Yeah, and if you want to put a number to it, so say we keep the same mill levy, that 12% represents about $450,000. So if you're talking, where did that extra money go? You can put a lot of things we talked about that assigned to it. So just something to look forward.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked through the budget, the big things that stood out to me is, hey, 112,000 for KP&F. That's a mill. That's $35 from every house for KP&F. 115,000 for a new park. That's another mill. That's $35 from every house. Then at least one new staff person. It's probably another accounts for one of those mills with the clerk that you were talking about. So there's a big chunk of that money right there.
Mhm.
And I'll put one more thing. And the hard part with the big win, hopefully with Integra, is having businesses in your community, a good mixed community. It really, because when you're talking residential only, there's a lot of services tied up, parks, police, all that. Not that businesses don't take care of police, but it helps to have a good mixture. Now that we're seeing a good mixture come through, hopefully that'll relieve some burden from everyone. That's the way I see it anyway, or the way I interpret.
Well,
when
and
you
the
get
thing
these
is that
wins.
we don't see in our budget too much because we don't have a lot of it is that retail businesses that are rates are 25% and
Yep.
residentials are 11%. So they're paying almost double the taxes on the value of their property. And their property values are a lot higher too. So there's a lot of potential there that you could see. That's one of the reasons I think we really need to push the marketing, because if you don't market it, you miss the opportunity. And I can tell you that I was out in California just about a month ago, and there's a lot of people still looking to get out of California.
Mhm.
And I told them about what's going on here, and they said, "Wow, that's kind of amazing." Now, will they come here? I can't tell you that, but but there is a lot of that because they are being taxed to death.
And I didn't put on.
Well,
this-
and I think
Yeah,
that that exactly is, a reason why I don't think we shouldn't get crazy with the mill levy reduction this year, but I do think we should do something. And
Yeah.
I think some of that is, even from a marketing perspective, that sends a great signal to the business community and to those looking at Bel Aire. You can see 2 years ago, we had a mill levy reduction. This year you have a mill levy reduction. Our mill levy may be higher than Wichita, but man, this is a great city and they're on a great financial track and they're actually lowering taxes. I think that sends a good message. So I'd like to see us do something in terms of an adjustment there.
I would too. I agree with you 100%. I just don't know what that number is.
So
Well-
Ted, just in my head, I appreciate the whole presentation, but also what you talk about, we're just a third of it, less than a third of it. And they get this confusing notice, which I appreciate, but I know it confuses, a lot of people. We can only do so much, but I know things are going to get better here when the debt payment goes off in a decade. And so, thinking about a mill being $100,000, I symbolically like the idea of a quarter or a half. I don't want to give up $100,000. I mean, I'd love to cut a mill or two, but knowing what that translates into for your budget, I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood, if we could get even a quarter or a half and just continue that steady trend, I'd be pretty happy with that.
I was thinking 43 would be a good target. Put it right at 43.
When we first started talking about reductions, we were talking $500,000 a year. And we got cornered into a $2 million reduction. So, I'd like to see a mill levy reduction, but I think we may have already had it. And on the other hand, I definitely don't want to see it go up. And I'd like to be able to show some major things that we've paid for to the citizens, like a new park or something like that, that they can see. They can say, look, I paid $35 more this year in my property taxes and we got this new park. So we can sell it.
So part.
Yeah, there you go. We'll sell it to a Chinese company and they'll rent it back to us. That's
Right.
what our other kind of city's been doing, isn't it?
And I hope that's what a lot of the maneuvers we're doing And again, with me doing a little bit more on the assistant city finance side, I can give you guys a lot of that better broadcasting of what we're doing, and then work with whoever else. So I mean, that's one of my big goals too. I think we've lacked in the bragging side of our city, and we just been, hey, that's what we do. But maybe we do need to start bragging a little bit on what we're doing.
We do, because I mean, I do think we have a good community. I do want to kind of agree with everybody. I'm for a slight reduction. I kind of, along with Justin, I think taking a half and getting it down to the 43 even is not a bad idea. I also am just kind of seeing what other communities are doing. Keachai passed a 1% sales tax. Park City is talking about doing it. I'm not suggesting we do that, but I'm suggesting in the next few years we probably ought to start potentially thinking about it. And my thinking on that is kind of along the lines that Ted just mentioned, is taking some of the burden off of our individual property tax, our individuals. And as we continue to grow the commercial side, I think when I asked Ty about it last year, I think it was when Keachai, earlier this year when Keachai voted, they estimated they generated about 90,000. I think you probably helped Ty with this calculation with the revenue department. I think it was somewhere in the 400,000. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
equate
probably
that-
conservative.
equate that to how many mills we're talking. And I kind of start to really want to think about, could that help us with the CIP project every year? Could that be dedicated to increasing our road maintenance? I think as a city, as we grow, I love the idea of continuing to lower the mill. And I think also we could consider some of those other funding options.
I think some of that might make sense when we have a significant number of commuters coming in and out of the city.
Yep.
Because they are using services of the city. And right now, we're not there, I don't think. But if Integra comes along, that's an obvious that's going to happen.
Yep.
So that might make more sense then.
I
I've
agree.
never really been a fan of tax increases of any type. And once I did agree with the one that Bobby and I did that got K96 built in the first place.
Sure.
Okay. But I've not really been a fan of it ever since. Other than that.
My only
kind of
support
thing.
would be as if it was a dedicated, that revenue would be used for a specific
Yeah.
means.
Yeah.
So
I
road
would- I
maintenance.
agree with that.
Had to increase the road maintenance budget. I agree with you, Mayor. And that's why I kind of said, is like, I don't think that's something we consider now, but I can see in a few years that could make a lot of sense.
If you do it now, all you're doing is taxing the same citizens that are already paying the tax.
Yep.
Okay.
Pulling
So-
it out of our left pocket instead
Right.
of our right.
Exactly.
Right. And so if you do it when you have more retail and more people coming in and out of the city,
Yep.
now you're drawing some people who actually use the services and they get to pay for some of that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense.
Another thing to think about, we $1.2 million in land debt a year. That's 12 mills. 43. We run our city pretty efficiently.
Oh, yeah.
If you go by that standard. Now, would there be other debt if there wasn't land debt? Let's not talk about that. But we've had to make hard choices because of that.
So that's one of the
you know,
interesting
it's-
things is, the land debt did put the city in a position where the city was constrained and had to make really tough economic
Right.
choices. And I
It did.
think the city's better as a result of that. Is that debt pressure's relieved? How do we not just
Maintain
spend
Right.
and be like every other city? How can we maintain those efficiencies and maintain that thrifty spirit to create superior value for the taxpayers?
Yeah. That's valid. We need to do that.
It's gonna be
Next
a real
10 years
challenge.
discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Ted, do you have any idea what the mill levy would be for the revenue neutral rate?
Yes. Oh, man. Let me get it out here.
How far?
Yeah. Well, good luck with that one.
Probably about 35 or 6.
Yeah.
You want me to give you
It's
Senator,
all
you want me to give you Senator Tyson's number?
15% increase is going to be a lot.
It's gonna be way down there.
Just gotta find the email. 1 second.
Yeah.
Here it is. So what it's going to show is 36.4 on the is the revenue neutral rate.
That's not a huge drop.
No.
Three.
7.
Seven mills.
He's thinking pennies. It's not that many pennies, no.
Last year's revenue neutral
Oh.
9.7, it's gonna go
Well,
down 3.
The hard part is you're going to see 19 where, and I'll stop, but like Wichita or Sedgwick County, you're going to see 7, but that number is so much, the actual dollar amount is so much higher. So it looks like the city of Bel Aire is capitalizing, but everyone is about the same boat. But the percentage is a little bit off because we're a smaller community.
And we talk about mills like they're a fixed thing, but they're
Exactly.
not. And
Mills
that's
actually
some
a
of the
terrible
prob-
way.
yeah.
Because one big business can change your mill rate.
And,
I mean, you hear all the stories.
and once you set the budget, then we find out what the real mill levy is because
Yeah.
we don't really know. We're doing an educated guess here. And then we come find out, like the one year we had the hiccup with the hoops thing and that changed the mill levy in a way that we didn't expect.
So
Yeah, these are all estimates.
Yeah.
Ted, if I'm looking at this right, based on the valuation increase, assuming no mill changes, there was a $1.1 million increase in revenue. Is that
727,000 would
Yeah.
be by the mill. Well, if we didn't change the mill rate.
just
Right.
by the okay?
Yeah,
because
that's
you-
including
other. Okay, I see.
other. Yeah.
Total assessed value divided. Yep.
And that's where I like 400 with the existing structures and 300 with new structures. So that's where we get the 7.
I'm good with the 43 mill levy.
Okay.
I think that's a good,
I'll go ahead and
good target.
bake that in, and then we'll take a look at it. Yeah, $50,000. So
All right. Thank you. Appreciate all the work.
Not too crazy.
Anything else that we need to discuss this evening? If there isn't, I think we're adjourned and we'll see everybody next Tuesday. Have a good night. Have a good week.